Everybody, welcome to another episode of Life Talks. Today I have Redmond on, and I recently met him through actually another guest that I've had on the show, Zach Small, and we're in a group together where we have challenges every single day that we have to tackle, and reached out to him, and he is from Africa, which is awesome. It's so cool to be able to talk to like-minded men in another country across the world. And it's just another realization that we're different, we're expressed differently, but deep down we're all the same. We all want the same thing. And it's to me, what that means is just a matter of growing in love, understanding what religion is versus religionism, trying to navigate through this life, trying to have real relationships, trying to overcome our own BS and all our negative belief systems and become the best version of ourselves. So welcome to the show, brother.
Man, thank you. Thank you for having me. And man, it's an honor. I've been watching your come up, and it's a privilege to be here. And yeah, I'm all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa, literally another continent, all the way on the other side of the world. And yeah, man, I'm here to share a message.
Yeah. So maybe we could start there. I mean, just before we go so deep into the stuff, because I know that's what we're passionate about. But maybe start there. What's life like in Africa, and what were you born there, and maybe say a little bit about what life is like there.
Bit of an intro, yeah. So I'm Redmond, all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm born and raised in Johannesburg South, a small part of Johannesburg called South Hills. I like to call it the hood. It's the equivalent of the hood. But yeah, grew up in a single parent home, had a dad, was never present. That's why my message on Twitter is one that speaks about being present, being intentional, being an active parent, a father. I'm on a mission to change the lives of men, to help cultivate a spirit of growth amongst men, to take back the kingdom. I am a husband. I've been married for 3 years. I've got 2 beautiful sons. And in addition to my family life, there's a lot I do outside of my 4 walls. I've been blessed, and I have the privilege of mentoring boys for foster homes through a great company that has an amazing initiative in fighting the battle of fatherless homes. My wife and I also run a ministry where we get to feed the homeless, which has been such a blessing and an eye-opener. If I ever look back on the fact that I feel underprivileged, or if I ever look back on the fact that I've had a struggle in my life. So yeah, man, I've given my life to the Lord in 2015, and ever since then, I have not looked back. So I'm all the way over in South Africa, a third world country, but we've got all basic access to everything you need. It's not like everybody thinks. Like I have a lot of people that think ignorantly, right? Like, can you walk outside your back door and see a lion? And I'm like, yeah, man, I got lions in my backyard. There's some giraffe my neighbor has, zebra, and whatever else it may be. Some people ignorantly think like that, but we are a fully developed country. We have roads, we have airports, we have hotels, we have everything everyone else has. So yeah, it's a beautiful country that has a great heritage. We've got 11 official languages. We have 11 different cultures within this country. And yeah, man, it's a beautiful place. If you ever get the opportunity to come out here, I welcome you. You've got a place to shack up, and we'll do some fun things.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, brother. And looking forward to it, God willing, with all the craziness going on, because we know where we stand on certain things. But shifting gears, I asked more recently with the guests that I've had on, what they believe a man is to be. And as I've grown, I'll share where I've just put a video on that, what it is to be a man. When I was more younger, it was to be nice. And then as I was older, it was, my definition of being a man was, how much attention I can get from women. That was my definition for a short period of time. And now it's, to me, to love God with all your heart and all your strength and all your might, to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, when I say that, when I listen to the younger version of me, if I heard somebody say that, I would say, okay, here we go, another religious person where it's just kind of dogmatic, because that's how I looked at the world. And now as I've gotten older, I go, oh, no, there's a deeper message there. We spoke, like you said, a week ago about the difference between, there is a difference between religion and religionism. And I think there's something that turns people off, and like it turned me off for so long. So maybe if you could share, maybe your growth into what that means to you. What does a man mean to you? And then maybe dive into, what religion means to you, and the difference between, what the world calls religion, or as we spoke last week, the Sunday Christians, right? This illusion that, oh, I go to church, I'm better than you. To me, that's the opposite of being Christ-like. Christ spoke with everybody as your neighbor next door. He would speak with atheists, Buddhists. It's not a matter of just, oh, you're a Christian or you're not. Like, it's embodying what that actually means.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, there's quite a few points that I can touch on there. So firstly, I also grew up in a similar environment where I had the mindset that was misplaced, thinking what a man really is, right? Do I have a bunch of women? Am I going to be a man that comes into money, into wealth? Am I going to have a nice car? Am I going to be the guy that other guys want to hang around with? You know what I mean? So that's just a false sense of security that we obviously grow up with, and obviously having a lack of a male role model in my life, a father figure. Like I said, I had a father, but he wasn't very present, and I had to kind of fend on my own and figure it out for myself. But shortly after giving my life to Christ in 2015, did I get the revelation that I need to.
What do you mean by that when you say give your life to Christ? Because everyone, I hear people say that. What does that mean to you, to give your life to Christ?
The coined term or phrase we have, being reborn, right?
Yeah.
Being created, coming into being a new individual, being made anew through Christ. So everybody thinks it's this divine, beautiful moment where the heavens open and you hear an audible voice saying, "I welcome you, my son," whatever it may be. It wasn't all of that. There were no lights, glitz and glamour. It was more of a heart condition. The Holy Spirit had spoken to me after getting revelation on Sunday, the 15th of November, 2015. I'll never look back. I had my arms up in church. I'll never forget the day. I had my arms up in church, and I'd been fighting a lot, right? And this is part of the story on how I became the man that I am today. I was fighting a lot. A few things that I can say with pride today that I have conquered, and I wear my mistakes because they make me the man that I am today. So whether I was an adulterer, whether I had been an alcoholic, whether I had been a substance abuser, all of those things were titles that were heavy and weighing me down. Before 2015, the 15th of November, when I raised my arms in church and I felt the Holy Spirit impart on me and just say, it's not your battle. You don't have to fight it anymore. You've got a new plan. I've ordained a new will for your life. And this is where I came into my second coming of understanding that I've got to own my life. I've got to own the space that Redmond operates in, right? So am I going to be lesser? Am I going to be pessimistic or optimistic in every one of my situations? Am I going to look forward? Am I going to be the man I need to be for my then girlfriend, for my then one son who was a few years old? I'm now a father of two, but there was that click in my mindset saying that nobody's going to fight my battles for me, right? Nobody's going to be the one that's going to make up my mind with regards to making the right decision, to finding a better job, to being a committed father, to being present in one of my relationships, whatever it may be. That tipping point for me was my religion. And for me, what being a man is being present, being able to hold your head up high, and most importantly, having a heart that can speak to men and dig into the trenches and lift others up. Because right now, what we do as guys, right, we've got the sense of pride. I don't need someone else's help.
Yeah.
I can fight it on my own. I don't need to speak to Jeff down the way. I don't need to speak to whoever it is, because they don't need to know my problems. That's that old school mentality, right?
Yes.
Fight your battles on your own. And you spoke about what being a man represented or meant to you, and that referenced God. Correct. And love. One of the first commandments, right? Love your neighbor. And love is spoken about heavily in the Bible. So if you've got that relationship and that overwhelming sense of love, why not go to someone who can share that with you abundantly? And for me, that part of discipleship, being an active father, being a present man, that can speak into other men and lift them up, pick them up, have that spirit that cultivates growth, have that spirit that can help move others forward, not worrying about self, but worrying about the next man. For me, that's everything, man. That to me is how we're going to change the nation, a step at a time. Because there are a lot of guys that are facing a lot of problems, and we don't have enough good men reaching out to these guys, because all of these guys are looking for a glimmer of hope. They're looking for someone to come along and say, man, can you help me? Can you help me? They're looking, and there's many, many outlets. We've got the modern age of the internet.
Yeah.
You can share a message with someone all the way on the other side of the world. It can be a scripture, it can be a powerful message, it can be a devotion, but you have the ability to change lives. And as the word says, you have the power to speak life and take life. And as a man, I claim that territory, I claim the kingdom by speaking life in every one of my encounters. That's where I'm at, but yeah.
Yeah, well, two things stood out to me there. One was a quote from Christ is, man will not live by bread and bread alone. That always stuck with me since I've been a kid. And as I've gotten older, it's more and more in my heart that it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, it's the spirit. It's the spirit of, you, and to me, it's connected with he who saves his life shall lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake shall gain it. So those two to me are tied in the sense that what is your value structure? How do you see the world? If you're in protective mode, security, protect myself, close my heart, as you said, not having disciples, not having a network of men that you can share your deep stuff, your deep dark stuff with, that won't judge you, but they won't kiss your ass either. To me, that's what my heart was so hungry for, because in mommy world, right, we're told to, you can share your feelings, you express your feelings and your dark stuff, and it's okay. And that's a part of it. To me, that's a part of it. I think that's, to me, is the feminine. Maybe we can shift gears going into this to speak on this, but that's the feminine. And to me, I was missing masculine. I was missing, for lack of a better word, for someone to shit on my bullshit and build me up, because like shit can be fertilizer. It's to knock me down, but not knock me down from judgment, knock me down like to humble me, to be around men. So then I can go out and have the capacity to humble people who are being prideful too, because I recognize my own pride and how that's destroyed my own, that's kept me down. So, and that's what, to me, that's more of authenticity. And that's led me to really understand the difference between being good and holy. And to me, holy is the recognizing of the opposites, right? To recognize that in order to really experience good, at least from my experience, is that I had to experience what it was. I had to experience my dark side and how that ended up coming to bite me back in the ass, right? I think I'm this separate person, but actually every single thing I do affects everything else. So every little lie that I tell, it's not just a lie to somebody else and I'm getting away with it. No. That comes back to me in ways that I don't even see. And as I recognize that, it wasn't until I saw the fruits of my own sin and ignorance and lies, even simple lies, where I would just say, I'm going to get up early today and get a good workout in. And then I don't do that. Well, now I just lied to myself. So to me, there's different levels of sin. Okay, I just lied to myself. Now I'm a little weaker going into tomorrow. And then if you have a whole culture surrounding that, what is that? How does that affect each other? To me, it creates even more division and weakness. And, and especially with the ideas like toxic masculinity, what a disgraceful thing to say. And not to say there isn't, I didn't even like using that word, not to say there's weak men and there's strong men. And the problem I see is we don't have enough strong men, because strong men have emotional stability. Strong men have the ability to work out hard in the gym. And I liken it to, and I'll pass it back to you with this. It's like, to me, the strongest version is a peaceful warrior. It's someone who has the capacity to be strong physically, to endure, but also has a place where he can keep his heart open, that he can see others in himself, and that he doesn't become a hard man where he's closed off from his heart. In fact, he has an open heart, and as a byproduct that he's also strong in other aspects. He does not react, he responds in situations. That's an internal, that to me is the spirit. That's received only when you're humble enough to receive it, when you shut up and learn from other people. And if when you speak, you're speaking your own, you have that, for me, I spoke on porn. That was my big thing. That was my big vice. once I got to the point, it's like, as you said earlier, wearing it on your sleeve, right? It's like, that's my story. I don't need attention from it. Like, it's not like poor me. It's like, no, that's part of my story. I had to go through that to realize the blocks of it, and it becomes a blessing. But yeah, shifting a little bit, maybe if we could talk about, because this is something that I really wanted to speak about with you, and in my own life, is the difference between the nice guy, the bad boy, and the good man. So to me, I see two worlds on Twitter. I see good men and bad boys, like in the sense of the red pill community and the holy community. And I use holy very lightly because there's a lot of people who pretend to be good, but I think it's very, very rare that there are good men. Many virtue signal or pretend, that they care so much, but it's really just an illusion. So maybe if we could talk about that. Do you see that too? Because I see that, and to me, it's more of a challenge to rise up, because there's a part of us that's dark, and we can't ignore that, but we use that to rise above it.
And there were quite a few good points that you mentioned there. I just want to take a step back when you were talking about the type of men that you can see around, right? As a man that's coming to masculinity, through a journey, right? You can always pick out the guy in the room that you're not going to mess with. You can pick out a guy that you can see is about his life. You know what I mean? So that comes with time. And we always place these ideas of being similar to other people, but we don't see their struggles. We just see where they're at and what they've amassed, whether it be the wealth, the car, whatever material object it is. We see that, but we don't see the struggle, right? And that's something we wear as guys also with our pride. One more thing I wanted to touch on was that verse you shared was really beautiful. And it's the irony in you sharing that verse, man shall not live by bread alone. That is the verse that my wife and I have set up for our ministry, right? So you shared the first part, which is man shall not live by bread alone. Second part is, man shall not live by bread alone, but also by the word that proceedeth out the mouth of God. So that is just God's confirmation to us, right? Once again, sharing the fact that, yes, we need food, we need sustenance. However, we need to be filled. We need our cup filled by him daily through scripture, through the word, so that we can be equipped to fight the battle. Not the physical battle, but also the mental battle with self, right? The battle that's shown up against us every single day when we talk about the good man and the bad man. And I do see exactly what you're talking about through the vanity. Obviously, we share a very similar profile on Twitter, and we aggregate with a lot of similar accounts. And I see the quote unquote Sunday Christians we spoke about, the ones that put the message out there because they want the following, they want the likes, they want the retweets. But you can also tell when someone is being genuine, right? A lot of the time it gets quite tricky with the
I would say more so in person, right? Through tone of voice and body language. And I feel like it's not as easy with just the text. I have a pretty, I stick by a pretty good rule that when I'm communicating with people, unless I'm very, very close with them, I try not to text much, just because it is how many fights there can be and misinterpretations, and someone texts okay. Is that a neutral okay? Are they saying okay just as a matter of fact? Are they angry? So, I really like to save communication, and specifically, like with my girlfriend, I don't like to really text too much, because when I see her, then I have an opportunity to speak more. And then, if we're just talking and texting all day, and in this world of just texting and constant communication, there's nothing to look forward to. There's no space in that too, and that's another thing. It's constant overload that, you don't find God or peace in the chaos. You do it more in solitude. You do it when you're by yourself, at least for me, in my experience.
Yeah. On that note, though, I agree with what you say with texting. It's really taken out humanity in our interaction, right? That coming together, that presence of joy. And even when we are around with each other now, I know we're going off topic, we're digressing off men and religion, but we will touch on a whole bunch of things. We'll take it as it comes, right? But that's also an attack on society, right? It shows up through many different avenues, through social media, through tablets, phones, laptops, whatever. It's everything that is trying to break down the family, the old family that would sit at a table and you would share values. How was your day? What did you get up to today?
Yeah.
That's good to hear. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Discussing
big time.
things as a family, building that relationship of value that's set on a fundamental that you do not let go of. Like, you know what I mean? The wise
Yeah.
man builds his house on a good foundation. Now, everything we are currently doing in society is under attack through these principles. So yeah, man, on that note of texting, I'm also not for it. I'd rather be relationship. I'm a relationship type person. We had a conversation today and I asked you for your number and we had a call immediately instead of texting back and forth.
Yeah.
Because it's a little confusing. You spoke about that confusion, right?
Yeah, because we're at a different time zone, and it seems to be military time. And so I'm trying to understand what time are we setting up this appointment. So yeah, rather just talk about it rather than all these texts.
That's something simple. That's something simple.
Correct.
Like time. But now there's a lot of other things that are texted about that get misinterpreted on a daily basis, whether it's relationships, whether it's family, whether it's finances, whatever it may be. There's some big things that get broken down via text. That's why having a relationship where you can actually physically speak to someone or share a message is so much more impactful. And as a man, we need to claim that. We need to own that.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. So I think I noticed a common theme. It seems that the red pill, much of the red pill, are not fathers. Something I've noticed. Much of the red pill is not, they're not fathers. They don't have sons or daughters, or so it seems to be a common theme that people on the same path have family. So the reason I bring that up is because I think, that ties into what is a man's purpose and the idea of the family that you talk about, right? Because otherwise I think you can live a life, in desire and lust. And, even that thing, like you just said, the sitting at the family table, that's something I've just implemented in my home, is just every single day, you're going to put your phone down. I'm going to put my phone down. We're going to talk about the day. And I listened to something from Jordan Peterson recently, where he spoke about, a lot of the people stuck in corporate America, their mission is to just get that alcoholic drink down by the beach. And he reframed it. He's like, how long is that going to last? When are you going to do that? You're going to do that for 6 months, have a drink? Well, in a matter of just a few days, you're going to be overweight. You're going to feel lethargic. So that's not, it's a projection of the mind, right? But you know what does last every day? Spending 30, 40 minutes just talking about how's your day? What's going on? What are blocks? What's your life like? Tell me about, like, and that's something you do every day. And that, the ability to communicate with people that you care about and communicate effectively, not like these just mundane things that we say, like, when you go to a store, how are you doing? Good. How are you? It's like, no, get into real conversations, so maybe if you could, speak about your journey into what the fruits of being a father and what does that mean? And what are the responsibilities and how do you see us moving? What can men do? Because one of the things with this podcast, I want people to like listen because I would listen to podcasts and I'd be like what can I do? So what can men do now immediately to be the best versions of themselves, to be the best fathers, husbands, and to be the best for the highest value in their life?
Yeah. So it literally starts within, right? And it starts at home. So firstly, like I keep mentioning, it'll be the third time that I mention it now, is taking responsibility. Being accountable for your actions, right? And you can't always do it alone. Yes, there are a lot of single parents, but it's so much better when you have someone, right? Whether it's a partner, whether it's a girlfriend. I'm not saying it can't be done on its own. I have many people that I communicate with and a lot of close friends that I've actually built up relationships with that are single fathers. And that stems from having a strong belief system and a value system that is not going to shift and move amongst the waves. It's something that you cannot let go. Because when you are weak, your children will see that, right? And you cannot be weak in front of your kids. You can. Sorry, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
You can, because you need them to see the emotion. You need them to understand. You need them to learn. But you can't carry and wear that emotion constantly. You also need to be strong for them. There's a fine line between that, right? And I also want to quickly just touch on what you mentioned regarding the red pill and all these accounts that we see, or let me say rather profiles or people that we encounter. And whether they are Christians or not, I really believe that we can communicate if you once again have a good value system. So it's not only a good Christian that has a foundation at home that can be a good parent. Anyone can be a good parent as long as you have a good value. So if I share value of integrity, honesty, kindness, that's not married to my religion. You can be Muslim, Indian, whatever it may be. We can still be friends. We can still hang out. You can still be a good father and not share my religion, but share good values that we can communicate on the same level on. Got that?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That for me is very, very important. So a lot of the time when I speak about wanting to share my message and what it means on being a father, I always marry it back to scripture. I always go back to the word. And I used to do it before where I was worried because people would think that you Bible bashing them or you like a Jehovah's Witness coming to knock on someone's door, right?
Yeah.
But like I told you, after giving my life, I do that now with pride because I really believe when God calls us, he calls us to be bold and share our message and our words unashamedly so. So every one of the moments I get, it literally stems from my
I just want to go look on social real quick because there's a quote that really it's from somebody who just posted on Twitter while I'm listening while you're speaking because it was so powerful. But
yeah, another thing I wanted to touch on quickly is when you mentioned that the message, right? The message that you see, the vanity every day that's shared via the messages, via the videos that are pre-recorded are completely different. And this is where being authentic comes into play because like this, something that's unhinged, something that's not recorded is a unique expression of what I bring to the table and the fact that my message matches what I say. I might tweet about God, I might tweet about the word, but I live it every single day through my actions, through my intent. I speak about being a father, being the man that was never in my life, being the father I never had, being a husband to a wife. There's a lot of things that I speak about that are important to me that I will not falter on.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because it makes me think of what my father said to me ever since I was younger. He says, your actions speak so loud, I can barely hear a word you're saying. So I think when the words become a byproduct of your being, that's when you know you're in the right place. And to me, that's a place of internal validation versus external validation, or the kingdom of heaven is within, it's not out there. So you're not speaking to get, oh, see, I say very nice things, I'm a nice philosopher. No. You understand the fruits of what you're speaking and preaching about, that the words they're secondary. So anybody confronts you, it's just like, no, or as Gandhi said, my life is my message, right? That's where we're in such power. And I just found the quote here. This is from Zach Hummel, who's on Twitter. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he pushes a lot of good stuff and he does similar stuff.
He's got a very good message.
Yeah, but he says, I don't push Jesus on my friends. I have many friends who are not believers and completely turned off from the idea. I respect them for where they stand. The very minute they have struggle or adversity and call on me is when I get to show them Jesus, and the last line is the best, without saying a word about him. The way I receive that is because I think people get turned off by the name, like, oh, here we go, Jesus. But if it was me, I think because to destroy your own hypocrisy is power. If it was me, I don't need people to know my name. I just want them to know my message. So if I were to die tomorrow and I had impact in their life and they forgot my name, that wouldn't matter to me as much as if I gave them some sort of insight that ignited a fire within them. And that's how I received that message, because it was just so cool how he's just, it's not preaching. You're not preaching. You get to embody what the principles of Christ is. And I think that goes back to the Sunday Christians. That's why so many people turned off. People show up and they're in nice clothes and all that. And Christ himself was pointing out like, hey, you got, I don't remember the exact quote, maybe you can fill this in for me, but essentially they were all dressed up very nice, but they corrupt inside. So they look nice, but they were corrupted inside. So he couldn't be fooled by the glamour of someone. And just today, people can be wearing suits and, as you said earlier, making a lot of money. And that doesn't tell me the value of who you are. That shows me that you have money, you know? So
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very powerful message, and that speaks about the fact that you can share your message all you want, right? But if you're not living that life of action, it's more important to actually live out that life every single day. You practice that obedience in your walk with Christ, right? God's envisioned you. He's equipped you with whatever gifts, whatever talents you have. And like he said, that when they come at their time of need, when they've turned away from depravity, all the wickedness, all the sin, all the hurt, all the heartache, they look forward and they see not man, but they see that lighthouse. They actually see Jesus. They see someone that had been through something they had been through. They couldn't hear the message at the time, whether the message was tainted in Jesus, whether the message was tainted in, I know a way out for you. Here's the scripture. Here's this word. They couldn't see it because their sin was weighing heavy. That was a burden on them, right? And everybody has that, when God closes the door, he opens a window moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everybody has that moment where God gives you a second chance. He doesn't want you to suffer. He doesn't want you to struggle. You know that. And they go through these moments and they might shut the door. And these moments keep showing up. They keep showing up. We get our forgiveness, our grace, our mercy that we get undeservedly so every single day. And that message on being a person that actions a life of change instead of going out and knocking on the doors every single day is the message that I'm about. That's something I want to do on a daily basis. And yeah, that's the majority of what my message is about on Twitter, in addition to having the faith aspect, the fitness aspect. It's just the end of the day is I'd love to bring the homies to Christ. I'd love to bring people to finding themselves and their own identity, man. That to me is what's going to build the nation again.
Yeah, and you bring up Twitter again. I mean, that's for me. It's funny. My story on Twitter started with like crypto. I saw crypto and I'm like, oh, this is cool. There's people talking about crypto and money. Yeah. And then it shifted to Donald Trump and all the patriots and all that. And then it was that's all I followed. And then that kind of just like, no, this is just more noise. I just went through all my followers. I said, let me filter this out. And what am I bringing to the table? What am I putting out there on Twitter? What is my message? And I was just following people. And there's nothing wrong if people give you good influence, but Twitter's such a great place. I mean, besides all these censorship and all the BS, there's still people sprouting up, and I just see it, you know, and I'm like, I'm that guy. Why can't I be that guy? Why can't I inspire other people to be that guy? You know, and it's like, and I've gotten to a place, maybe you can share, you know, what you think about this, but I've always heard the quote, ignorance is bliss. And there was a part of me that didn't fully digest that didn't sit fully with me, because it was just like, well, if you walk around and just ignoring what's going on, then, you know, sure, you could be blissful. There's plenty of people they're completely oblivious to what's going on, but there's a certain thing that just didn't make sense. And I think I got it. And to me, ignoring what does not fuel your internal growth is bliss. So in other words, I think people need to look at the problems of the world right now in moderation. You can't be blinded to that. Christ was not blinded to what was going on. He felt, I mean, he sweat blood. Okay. This is not a man who is just like, you know, he was peaceful. Don't get me wrong. His presence, I'm sure, would have been powerful, but he went through that. And we spoke, you know, to me, the most powerful thing it's the pain of the death of the ego. Now, in the moment, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be told, hey, you know what, these are your weak points, or, you know, being around like-minded men who were telling you, you know, you got to call out your own BS and all that. And then also the pain of the emotional pain, people hurting you, or, you know, anything that people are going through. But to be with that pain, to understand it, to not take things personally, that's a death in and of itself. And that to me was the most growth that I've had in my life. But that is that always stuck with me, and to all the problems in the world and all the, the division, much of here in the States. But like I said, I'm not going to go too deep into politics, but one of the reasons I made my channel was I think we need to talk more about politics and religion, because they are the foundation, they're avenues to a person's value structure. So if we don't want to talk, to me, that's what I think men should be talking about on dates. It's what we should be talking about at the dinner table. What do you believe and why do you believe it? And having healthy debates and debates to go deeper within, so you can understand why you think what you think. But maybe if you could share, I guess this is the idea of the black pill, and also tied with the red pill too, right? You have to see the problem, but at a certain point, you have to not be staring into it, because then you're going to become hopeless and depressed. And it's like, focus on Jesus. That's another way of saying it, right? It's like you see the hell, focus on the light, focus on what is in your power. But I think there's a certain catalyst, there's a certain process of looking at hell, in a sense. You have to see what you don't want and why you don't want it, so then you can focus all of your energy and say, no, I'm not even going to look back at hell. I see what that is. I see what it's like to gossip. I see what lust is like. I see what gluttony is like, laziness. I don't want that, not because, there's obviously a feel-good thing out of those things. Otherwise, people wouldn't do it. People don't do drugs because they're like, hey, I want to completely destroy my life. No, they do drugs because there's some sort of pain. They want to escape from that. And then seeing that, oh, well, there's secondary problems. Now there's a whole other thing of problems. You're not free. You're bound to these things. Then you focus on the light. So, what are your thoughts?
That ignorance bliss message is something that gets shared about or brought up very often, man. And when you look at that Twitter space, it's a very unique space, right? Because there's all the sensory that you can do. You can actually aggregate your accounts the way you want. And yes, there's all those circles, right? Whether it's Trump, MAGA, everything you've got going on there, COVID, vax passes, the list goes on before we get too deep into politics.
For sure.
But once you start removing the clutter, right? Removing the noise and focusing on accounts that push growth, accounts that push that mindset, that's when we start talking about the red pill, right? And understanding where we're going. What I was thinking about that now is we have needs and wants, right? And a lot of the time our needs are basic necessities to get by. And a lot of the time the wants are things that we see through these accounts. And we have these ideas of being different. And a lot of the time, we're not pushing our own message or our own identity because we're too busy being focused on what society is throwing at us through the noise, through the politics. And a lot of the time, our vision's clouded by all of these, whatever we're going to call them and label them, right? We don't want to get into the politics, but it's brought up time and time and time again. And through these moments of lapse, we are constantly being derailed from being who we are. It's it's a very tricky topic to talk about online when it comes to politics and all these things.
Yeah, it makes me think, because I think in part, I think the reason I bring that up is I think in part of being a man is the ability to fight or confront effectively. And because that's something that Christ did, right? He man, you want to talk about a fighter without fighting? I mean, he's the embodiment of it. Bear your cross, bear the burden, do what is right, no matter what. Do not go against your conscience. And that's a hard thing to do when you have 1,000 people next to you making decisions. And now you're saying, well, this goes against my conscience. And I maybe can't fully articulate it, but I can't go against my conscience. And I have to trust that whatever my decision is, it'll play out the right way. And that for me was a really hard thing to do, 2020, 2021, but I had to do it. And I'm glad I did. I definitely got stronger. And I see that there's a lot more problems coming our way, but the ability to endure is something that I talk about a lot. The ability to endure, rather than say, I hope everything works out okay, how I want it. That's a matter of your projections. Some of the worst things that can happen to you are the best things. You often hear, for example, people get cancer. And in the time, I wish cancer, no pain on anybody. But many of the times people overcome that. They say it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And that to me is more spiritual growth than anything, to hammer in on that point again, the pain, we spoke last week, some of the struggles that you've gone through, the struggles that I went through in the moment, being stuck in lust and porn. I felt like I can't talk to anybody about this. because,
Yeah.
it's something that I'm so shameful of. And like, and then the people I would say it's, oh, there's nothing wrong with porn and you enjoy it. It's like that the world it's people. I mean, it's when you see how deep it is, how deep the social conditioning is and how rare it is to be able to really go with inside and say, now I'm at the point where it's like, no, porn is actually absolutely evil and corrupt, but people are lost. People are trying to get that feeling of being free within through a vice outside, and think about all the people who are in the industry too. It's like they're suffering too, but not there's not enough people who can articulate why it is suffering, right? Because we've become so deadened by our senses and our culture, which it bleeds into other industries too. Fast food, fast sex, fast money. Everything's right now instant gratification. So our brains are wired. So on a certain level, we've become normalized to it. So it's like, when you speak out against it, it's like, oh, who are you to speak out? It's like, this is how life is. They don't even realize how blinded they are. That's like, forgive them. They know not what they do, to really embody that.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I thought I lost you there for a sec. Yeah. Going back in on that, I agree with you. There is a massive taboo when it comes to being open and honest about these things. Like, we function in society like it's okay, like functioning alcoholics, functioning porn addicts. There are people that live amongst us that do this every single day. And once again, these are the same people that we spoke about when we touched on earlier. These are the guys that are out there looking for a sign, looking for help, looking for guidance. There's a big portion of these people that are way too far down the river. There's almost no hope for them. And at the same time, that's their belief projected on themselves. I believe that there is always hope, but it's a mind shift thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a mind shift thing for them to understand that it's more of a God shift thing. That's what I like to call it. God needs to show up in a moment of revelation in their life, despite whatever it is that they face, in whatever it's substance, porn, domestic violence, abuse. There's a lot of things that plague men. A whole bunch of things, right? And like I said, those taboos are something that we don't face. We keep to ourselves, and that's why the rates on male suicide, I'm sure they are also skyrocketing, going through the roof in the States.
Yeah.
It's something that's not uncommon globally. I think it's something that's currently taking off. And in our country specifically, right, there is GBV, which is gender-based violence, rape, a few others that are very, very serious: rape, murder, gender-based violence. There's all these things that plague from guys fighting against not changing the taboo, not speaking up, not opening up, facing those problems, wearing those burdens, and eventually giving in because it's too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think maybe to end on this is the shift. I mean, you talk about domestic violence, something that keeps coming up with me, and I have to call this out because it just 50 Shades of Grey. Now, this series sold 150 million copies from what I heard.
That's
so
crazy.
To me, when I see this, and then I see toxic masculinity, and I see the structure, the alcoholism, the porn, all these other things, this is men trying to embody their frame. This is men trying to become, how can a man become dominant but not domineering, right? Where he is trying to be this macho guy, right? Instead of being in his own power. And when you're in your own power, you're a dominant person. You don't give a shit what other people are going to say, because you're standing for the highest truth as you come to understand it. And that's a very attractive quality. But with the destruction of, a lot of these institutions going on, there's no one to talk to about that. Or you go, or at least for me, it was like, oh, well, you go to a therapist, and even these institutions, a lot of the ideas don't align with my values. So deep down within my heart, it's like certain conditions to me are just misunderstandings. For example, ADHD, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm still coming to understand myself, but a lot of these are, to me, they're spiritual problems. There's spiritual problems, which meaning is that it's the hunger of the heart. It's the inability to communicate with people. So then we just slap a label, and this is your condition. No, maybe people are lacking love, and love, to me, they say God is truth. it's our highest truth. To grow in love is to grow in truth. When you're aligned with truth, you're naturally a loving person. But if I try to be a loving person, that's not going to work out. That's not truthful. So to me, be truthful is to be real, to how much of my own authenticity can I express, and I get that back as I have the willingness to express it. And to me, that's one of the things I really want to dive into, especially with my channels, to help other men with that through my own experience, because I don't have all the answers. I'm learning it right now, speaking with you, expressing how I see it. So you may have some insights, and then you share with me. It's like, hey, Mike, I see it this way. And that's the process, because I'm in a place where I'm going to teach people who can learn from me. And I'm also going to learn from a lot of people who can teach me. So, but yeah, that's something to me, I think a lot of people are suffering. You can't tell a man that he's toxic masculine, and then at the same time say you want a man who's going to do X, Y, Z. That you know what I mean? This hypocrisy that it's like, you know, and it's the same thing with women too, right? It's like women are now told they have to do all of these things, but then at the same time, it's like, be everything. People can't be everything. We have to recognize our opposites, our polarities, you know, that what makes a man, what makes a woman, and we complement each other. We should be fighting each other, just another tool to keep us all divided.
I'm glad to say I've not watched any of those movies, series, or even those books. I think my wife's also been against it, and I really think once again that's an attack on society and the modern man, the modern woman, and the relationship. Right? It's setting a false sense of security. It's setting an expectation that's not achievable. It's for no lack of better words, it's porn. That's all it is. Whether it's soft or hardcore, it's just covered up in something else.
Correct.
Whether it's R18, whether it's extremely graphic, it's just covered up in something else. And once again, it's making women look at guys wanting what they see on TV. It's something that they're never going to get, and it's something that has happened to guys through watching porn. Also, they have all these sick and weird fantasies and fetishes that should not be fulfilled by a lady, by a beautiful lady that you call your girlfriend, your wife, your spouse, whatever it may be. It's something that should be frowned upon. It's disgusting. It's inhumane. It gets me riddled when I think about that. It's something that I also conquered. It's something that I faced for the longest time. Oh man, I'm just so happy I'm also over that hill. And we've got to be conscious to the fact that it's still something.
That's the key word. I say conscious, right? Because to reject it can't. To me, it has to be understood. And the reason I say that is because, for example, with the porn thing with me, it has to be understood in order to be let go of, right? Because obviously there's a big attraction. If I come out here and I say to you, people shouldn't watch porn. Well, if someone's watching porn for 10 years, they're going to listen to me and hear me and say that. And then they're going to say, well, why should I give it up? You know, that's natural or whatever it is. So I have to raise my consciousness up to a level where it's like, no. Don't you see where this leads? And to be able to see how it will lead to destruction rather than to shame people, right? Because to truly overcome, we have to understand why that attraction is there in the first place. So that's why, you know, when I see, you know, and even in my own life, like I would see like what I would, and this is to me why I say there's, and this is the take from, I think Michael Malice came out with this. He has a book called The White Pill. I just like the reference. I don't necessarily agree with all his ideas, but the blue pill is basically the idiot, the bumbling idiot who's he is operating on validation. You know, he's buying flowers so that he can get a girl to like him. And then the red pill is, I don't care at all. And there's more power there because it's pride, and pride is better than apathy. Pride has more power, but it's not the ultimate. It's not love, right? So there's certain blocks of that, right? And to go above that, to me, is the good man. Now, the good man can implement principles of the bad boy, right? Which is, I'll tell you whatever the hell I want, but at the same time, I'm going to treat you as I would treat myself. So there's certain principles of the good guy and the bad boy that when they're integrated, you become a whole person, a holy man. Right, that you have the ability to implement boundaries with someone, but at the same time, you have the ability to love. To me, that's true love, because otherwise you're weak, or it's. I guess you could say it's passive versus aggressive versus assertive. That's another way of expressing it.
So I agree with you 100%. And what we've recently been through the challenge, right, is the fact that women do have fantasies, guys do have fantasies, right? And that's
Correct.
okay. But you can safely practice those fantasies within the avenue or realm of your relationship. It
Correct.
doesn't need to be something that's being projected through something you've seen online,
Correct.
because your wife was not designed to bend that way. Your
Correct.
wife was not designed to do whatever they are doing online, right?
Yeah.
So you
I
can
think that's a good
fulfill.
point, because I think that becomes an internal. It should be an internal growth with the woman that you love, and that's
Exactly.
privately, and that to me is something that's grown in. But I think, yeah, that's actually a really good point, because you're watching all of this media, and then you have these ideas that you have of, oh, this is how it should be, and then it becomes chaotic rather than an inner growth, and there's so much more of a deeper connection. But I think that's lost because there's so much. It's
And
external validation.
yeah, and once again, it's frowned upon when we say this as Christians, but sex is a beautiful thing. Sex is created by God. It's a principle from God, and it was designed for two people to come together and consummate something beautiful. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
as we grow as individuals, we grow in our mind, we grow in our relationships, and we should grow in love and intimacy at the same time. We shouldn't stay in the same place, because then relationships become mundane. Then you start looking elsewhere. Tinder starts showing up, whatever it may be, right? These things have a way of creeping up. The devil's always busy. He never quits. He never goes on break. He never takes leave. So we need to be actively working that muscle, like our faith muscle. We need to be working that language of love. We need to be working that with our respective partners, our spouse. The same thing goes with every one of the relationships in your life. If you're not actively working on that, not actively pouring into that, pouring faith into that, do you expect them to flourish? Or do you expect them to grow without a constant input? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely not. You wouldn't if you don't. So I guess maybe we can end on, let's see. I mean, I make this up as I go, right? So
Yeah. That's
think,
what's unique. What's unique about this.
yeah. Yeah, well, that's one thing when I made this, I just didn't want to I didn't want it to be an interview. I wanted to develop my own way of communicating and listen, and I really have to say, I appreciate, you, to me, you're very good. You're very, it's great to talk with you, because a lot of the time, and this is something that I've had trouble with over the years, to really, I'll say something, but you have the ability to listen to what I've said and repeat it and then branch off of it. And, I really do appreciate that, because to me, I was thinking about this earlier. It's the difference between listening, waiting until you're done to say something versus actively listening to you and then responding. Right. And if for me, I've noticed when you're in the craziness of the world, it's very rare to have that. It's very rare to have somebody who's actually listening to you, to listen to you, especially when things are more heated, when there's a disagreement, but to listen and to listen before speaking rather than waiting to speak, to say what you want to say.
That's very important, because a lot of the time we literally listen to respond.
Yeah.
We have these preconceived notions of what someone is facing, and before they've already shared their full message, we've already regurgitated and told them what's wrong with them, what they can do better. But a lot of the times, that's something that makes people frown upon relationships, and a lot of the times people actually push people away, because people need a shoulder. People need to sometimes project. You have these moments, and with me spending a lot of time in the Word and having a very small circle, I know when someone comes to me and they want to speak to me. It's similar to the relationships I have with my son. If my kid comes to me and says, "Hey, Dad, let's go and spar, let's box a bit," I know that is something that's masking, "Hey, Dad, I'm feeling uncomfortable about something, but I want to chat to you." You know what I mean?
Yes.
So you got to have the ability to listen to someone, but also hear them.
Yes. Very, very good. Very good. Yeah. That's insight, right? That's insight. And that's why I don't like texting that much.
It's really hard, because if you start thinking about it, right, maybe after this call, you start practicing it, right? So a lot of the times when we have these conversations with people, they come and share something, whether it's heartache, whether it's relationship advice, whether it's something bad that happened. In our mind, subconsciously, we already start answering these questions. We already start plotting our response.
Yeah.
That's why sometimes, a few of the times now where you've mentioned something, I've literally listened to a few of the questions and I kept trying to go back to the points instead of thinking, how am I going to answer this? So sometimes it might look like I've hit a blank, but it's because I'm trying to process the most authentic and genuine answer I can give you.
Yeah.
I'd rather do that. I'd rather answer you with something that is not profound and something that is a minor truth, opposed to me pulling something out of my ass that makes no sense and has no relevance.
Correct. Yeah. Well, I guess to end, maybe we can say, because like I said, one of the biggest things that growing up, what I hated about a lot of documentaries, because I was always the documentary junkie. I wanted to learn. What's the truth? What's the truth behind the layer? But at the end of all these documentaries, I'd always be left with this sense of hopelessness, right? It's like, oh, global warming, or, okay, even the political conscious things that we're aware of, all the craziness going on right now. I never got that sense of, well, this is what you can do. It was always like, well, this evil boogeyman, and unless this changes, then we're also like, what would you give advice? I mean, you're a father. What advice would you give to people who are suffering, who, let's say they have vices, or let's just say people who have overcome their vices, who are struggling with enduring, right? As we said, there's a lot of problems going on, and people lose their jobs, their belief systems to stand for what they believe is right, or people, they're shamed and guilted for standing against a lot of the policies that are going on right now in our world. What would you say to people that to focus on when things are really getting hard, and or who are struggling with vices and don't see how they can come out to be the best version of themselves?
For me, this is an interesting one, and I can beat on about it for a while, but the biggest takeaway for me would be not looking for validation in others, right? So taking a step back, getting rid of society. Social media plays a massive influence in this. A few basic steps would be focusing on yourself, not focusing on the news, because that is fear mongering at its finest. Stop looking for validation in others, and focus on building momentum, building routines. So if you're struggling with something, look for something to replace that, right? A lot of the common ways out, and I know people don't want to hear this, but a lot of the times, all of these things people do, right? Whether it's porn, whether it's certain addictions, is they need to get out more. They need to socialize more. They need to interact more. A lot of the time, these are people that are introverted, that are kept to themselves. And finding, I want to say for lack of better words, a support circle, or finding a community, whether it's going for a walk in a park every single day, whether it's reaching out to someone, a family member that you can have an open and honest conversation with. There are many great avenues and opportunities that you can look at before you look at the problem that shows its rear end every single day. The problem is, you mentioned earlier, it's 10 years of facing that addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And how does one just simply switch off?
Yeah, I have to convince my mind, who has rationalized the addiction, right? So say, oh, there's nothing wrong, and then it just becomes a habit. So replacing habits. Yeah,
breaking habitual cycles are really, really hard, and I believe that they can be done on your own through a lot of deep diving and a lot of prayer and a lot of time in the Word. But 90% of the time, I really believe somebody else's story is going to affect you. If you go out and you do research on a specific topic, whether it's someone overcoming being a cheater, someone overcoming being a meth addict, whatever it may be, there's always a story of hope that can show up. And one of these stories have the ability to speak to you. All you got to do is really be open and honest to receiving that advice. A lot of the time, we want to do good and we want to have a change because we don't want to affect those around us. we are in relationships and we have people that look up to us, people that are peers, mentors, family, whoever it may be, and we don't want to let them down. So a lot of the time we say yes to that commitment in wanting to be better without taking that step, that self-realization of saying, I want to be better for them, but do I want to be better for self?
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest part of advice, is actually taking that time to reflect on why you're doing this, because it needs to start within. It needs to start with you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Just to add to that a bit, for my own experience, it's you put your faith in God, which is that to me, it's just there's different ways to articulate it. It's to me, it's internal trust, which is peace. It's your navigation system. It's to clear out all those blocks. And I don't think, are you familiar with David Goggins?
Yes. Oh, he's crazy, man.
Yeah. So if you go on his Twitter, he's not following anybody. He's got, millions of followers. Not everybody is David Goggins. And that's why I think, all things are possible for he who believes. So I don't think you even need people, but I think it can be a tool. I think it'd be a tool. I think, and to me, to add to that, I think the best teachers are the ones who don't want to be in a position of teaching you for too long. They want to, a good doctor doesn't want to keep his patient, get rid of his patient as quickly as possible. And that's something that's one of my goals with this, is that I don't want people to follow Michael Bacchioni. I want people to follow me so that they may follow themselves, and then they don't need my videos. Just like I would watch so many videos on YouTube of so many influential people. If I was depressed, I'd look up, all right, depression, and then I'd watch talks on depression. If I was anxious, watch talks on anxiety. Oh, wow. And then it became, but then that also became a thing where I was just watching them and I wasn't going within. But then I took the tools that many people gave me and to go within. So I think that's a really good point. And I think, but I think what you said too is even it could be it doesn't have to be a therapist or a priest, or because I think that's we are each other's teachers, right? And if you think in your life, there's you got one person out there, or go on Twitter, go on these places where you can see like this person makes sense, but don't follow man, follow God, right? Because people can be blinded by just one person. And I think for me, that was one of the things that kept me in the dark, because it was just like, how am I going to trust this person? How do I, because just because everybody has problems, right? It's very rare you find someone who you can really click with, that isn't going to use that, your pain against you. And, but I think when you get to the point too, where you're just like, this is my story, this is what the hell happened with me. And you're not using, because I think a lot of our culture too, they use the victim mentality as like their identity. And this isn't what I'm talking about. And I'm sure you're in agreement with that. It's like, no, this is my story. It's like, I don't have any shame and guilt anymore, because if I could be a better person, I would have at the time, but I wasn't. It was a block for me. And then it's like the last scene in 8 Mile, right? That's a great movie. He owns all of his crap, all the things he's ashamed of, all the things that he feels. And then that becomes the power but he's not using it as, poor me. He's using it as like, that's my story. What am I going to do? Run from it? No, I'll embrace it.
Exactly. One thing you'll notice when you asked, and I mentioned all those different references, whether it's an outlet, whether it's a video, whether it's accountability partners, I didn't mention therapists, psychologists, doctors, didn't mention either of them, because it's the moneymaker, right? They want to keep you. They want to keep you in that place.
Yeah, many. I wouldn't say all, because there's always the exception.
Not all.
But it's like the system. It's built into it.
Not all of them. Okay, let's rather say the system. Let's not go too political. But yes, I didn't mention them because obviously my power comes from Christ, right? And the beauty in that is it's part of your testimony. You spoke on that scene from 8 Mile, right?
Yeah.
Every setback is your comeback. So your testimony, like I mentioned to you the first time we spoke, I wear it on my sleeve. Your testimony is the greatest weapon that you can ever fashion against any enemy.
Yeah.
It's the greatest weapon that you can use. It's the greatest tool you can use to disciple others without telling them too much at being a Christian or about being a Christian. You can just tell them what's happened in your life and what you've been through without even talking about God, because your testimony comes from God, right? You can just tell them what you've been through, and that's
Yeah,
enough.
it can be like a weapon. To me, it's like a
Exactly.
weapon in the sense
A
that
weapon. It is a
keep,
weapon, yeah.
it's like a sword of truth, right? It's like you keep that in there. You don't go around telling everybody your problems, because I think that's something that I've grown into in the idea of what it means to be a man, right? I mean,
Yeah.
to me, when you get into the power of God, right, or the power of truth, and again, these words are synonymous. When it becomes paradoxical, in other words, to be a strong man means you have to bear burdens. You don't need to, you don't put that on other people. But the opposite is true at the same time. Sometimes you have to put that burden on people who are close to you. You know, like I give the example, like if you have, for men with their wives, right? If you have like someone who you're close dies in your family, for example, that mourning process, I think, is something you go through with your wife. You can express your emotions. This is something that is natural, and there's no, men don't cry as a lie. But if you're crying all the time, it's weak, right? So, but to have both of those, right? To have a space in your heart where you can express your emotion. There's a time and a place where just like, no, I can't be that person. But most of the time, the problems of life, the bills that we get, or the conflicts that we have in life, to be around people who teach you to suck it up. And that's why I think it's really important to have brothers that you can lean on, right? Don't put your problems in your relationship, you know, because there's already going to be enough problems, right? And in order for you to be, they say iron sharpens iron, right? For men to really be there, if you're going to cry against your problems, try to do it with men who you can trust and confide in, so that you can be the strongest version with your wife, right? And she'll respect you more for it. And again, the opposite is also true. There's a time and a place. And I think you grow into that once you trust yourself to know those differences. You don't even have to pretend. It's like, no, I have to be a tough guy here. No, it's like, no, I feel I have to mourn, right? So it's radical. You said it before, it's internal. And I love that. It's internal validation. It's internal, and it's not internal here. It's internal here. Because internal validation is, correct. It is a heart condition.
A heart condition. So we think about it, and we place our trust in man, and man will always let us down, right? But at the same time, we need to have discernment. Once you get that biblical truth of discernment in your life, where you understand right from wrong, good and bad, evil, whatever it may be, right? You will know in your heart when a message needs to be shared. And a lot of the times we spoke on the fact that guys don't share it because they're too prideful. But once you get that revelation, once that light is displayed to you in all its glory, you know when you need the countenance of a brother. You know when you need to reach out. And I'm like, Michael, I need to talk. And I know this is a message that I cannot carry on my own. And we are not meant to fight all our battles, like I said. And you also know when something is not worth sharing, because you're going to get told, suck it up, buttercup. Like, get over
exactly.
You're going to get told, this is something that you shouldn't be speaking to me about. You're a man of value. You're a man that has stature. And right now, maybe it's an attack because you're being weak. You know, and those are the type of relationships that I want to develop, where you can speak to guys in community. And I luckily, I'm blessed enough to share quite a few good friendships with people that I know I can let the lid off if I need to. And at the same time, having that ability and knowing that I have that outlet has made me think, should I really share this, or is this something I can fight on my own? Let me take a minute to think about it. And then a lot of the time I'm actually, oh no, he would have told me this. This is what he would have said. I should start here and do this, whatever. And then before you know it, I've conquered that battle on my own.
It's a process.
Yeah, it is.
Sometimes you might share something with somebody, and it's like you need to be told, like, handle your shit, right? Like, handle this piece, like, and it's like, if you never like got to that point, if you're someone who's so weak-minded that you never like something, whereas a speed bump for somebody and it's a mountain for somebody else, you know, they have to kind of teach you, no, that's just a speed bump. You know, it's like, oh, all right, and that's a real communication.
We also, when we speak about practicing discernment, you are allowed to speak to people. You can speak to people, because if someone you know has been through a challenge that you've not faced on your own, then why would you go and recreate the wheel, where you can go to someone who's already been through that and endured, and could possibly help you fast track or help eliminate potential forks in the road or speed bumps. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Well, Redmond, I appreciate you coming on, brother. I'm actually looking forward to having you on again because I really did enjoy this conversation. I think this message needs to get out to more men. We need strong men in our culture, more leaders. A real man has the ability to lead. And I see you as a leader. I feel it in your energy, brother. So keep on fighting the good fight. And where can people find you? I recommend people check out Twitter. You're on there. What's your handle?
Well, thanks for having me firstly, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoy your show and I see great things coming, man. I look forward to you also getting a few more guys on the show. There's a lot of guys in this dad Twitter space, this masculine place, not the toxic masculinity place, the masculine place. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter under my handle at Redmond Louw. It's REDMOND LOUW. And yeah, that's the only social that I'm on at the moment. And yeah, that's it. That's where I share my message about faith, family, and fitness. Once again, unashamedly so.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks,
it's been
brother.
an absolute pleasure, man.